Welcome to Eastern Brush, Western Soul, a channel dedicated to sharing Eastern classics and paintings, brought to you by a group of friends in North America who share a passion for Eastern ink art. Today, we will explore 5 stories from the 47th volume of Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, Yaojie, a renowned collection of short stories by Pu Songling, 1640 to 1715, a master storyteller of the Qing Dynasty. The stories we'll discuss today are Wu Qiuyue, Princess Lotus, the Green-Clad Woman, Miss Lotus Blossom, and Jin Sheng's. Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, also known as the Ghost and Fox Tales, is a collection of nearly 500 stories, mostly revolving around fox spirits, ghosts, and supernatural creatures, reflecting the social landscape of 17th century China. Let's dive into these fascinating tales that blend mystery, folklore, and the complexities of human nature. The story of Wu Qiuyue. Wang Ding of Gaoyou, styled Xianhu, was a man of great generosity, bravery, and strength with a wide circle of friends. At 18, he was still unmarried when his fiancée passed away. Wang Ding frequently went on journeys that often kept him away for over a year. His older brother, Wang Nai, a respected scholar in Zhangbei, was very fond of his younger brother and advised him to settle down and even proposed finding him a wife. However, Wang Ding ignored this advice and took a boat to visit a friend in Zhenjiang. His friend was away, so Wang Ding rented an upstairs room at an inn. From his room, he could enjoy the scenic view of the rolling river and the distant Jinshan mountain, which put his mind at ease. A few days later, Wang's friend invited him to stay at his home, but Wang Ding politely declined and continued to stay at the inn. After staying there for over 2 weeks, one night Wang Ding dreamt of a young woman around 14 or 15, beautiful and refined, who joined him on his bed. Upon waking, he was astonished to realize he had experienced a nocturnal emission. At first, he thought it was just a strange coincidence, but the same dream occurred the next few nights. Astonished and a bit wary, Wang Ding left a lamp lit while he lay in bed, alert despite his apparent repose. As soon as he closed his eyes, the young lady reappeared in his dreams, and he suddenly woke up to find the ethereal beauty still in his embrace. She looked at him, shy and demure, and Wang realized she was not of this world. Though surprised, he was taken by her and could not resist holding her again. The girl seemed overwhelmed and said, "Such passion! No wonder I was hesitant to appear before you." Wang Ding then asked her about herself. The girl introduced herself as Wu Qiuyue. Her late father had been a learned scholar who cared deeply for her, predicting that she would not live a long life, and therefore did not arrange a marriage for her. She passed away at 15 and was buried east of the attic with no marked grave, just a stone slab with the inscription, "Here lies Wu Qiuyue, unmarried for 30 years, destined to wed Wang Ding." 30 years had passed, and now that Wang Ding was here, she had eagerly appeared in his dreams to meet him. Wang Ding was delighted, and although he wanted to continue their intimacy, Qiuyue cautioned him, "I am sustained by a faint breath of Yang energy, which I must protect if I am to come back to life. There will be time for this later, so let's not be hasty." She left quietly. Qiuyue returned the next day, and she and Wang Ding spent time together as if they had been longtime friends. They extinguished the lamps, and in the dark she was as warm and real as any living person. However, whenever she left, Wang would find the bedding soaked from his nocturnal emissions. One moonlit night, they walked together in the courtyard, and Wang asked, "Is there a city in the underworld?" Qiuyue answered, "Yes, just like here, though it lies about 3 or 4 miles away and is active at night." Wang Ding asked, "Can the living see it?" She replied, "Yes, they can." Intrigued, Wang asked to visit. Qiuyue agreed, and they set off in the moonlight, Qiuyue moving as swiftly as the wind while Wang struggled to keep up. In a moment they arrived, and she applied some saliva to his eyes, after which he could see clearly in the darkness. Before him, he saw a city looming in a misty haze, crowded with people. As they watched, 2 guards passed by with several prisoners, one of whom appeared to be Wang's brother, Wang Nai. Shocked, Wang approached and asked, "Brother, why are you here?" Wang Nai, with tears in his eyes, said, "I don't know why they've detained me." Wang, enraged, demanded his brother's release, but the guards ignored him. Enraged, Wang drew his sword and in a flash decapitated one of them. Qiuyue, alarmed, urged him to flee immediately. She advised Wang to leave town, keep mourning banners up at home, and avoid visitors for 7 days. He heeded her warning and after returning home with Wang Nai, followed her instructions. 7 days later, Wang Nai was fully restored to life, and his family learned of his miraculous resurrection. Wang Ding, eager to see Qiuyue again, returned to the attic room. Just as he was drifting off, a woman appeared, informing him that Qiuyue had been imprisoned for aiding him. Distraught, Wang Ding followed the woman to the prison. There he saw Qiuyue being tormented by the guards. Furious, Wang rushed in, cut down the guards, and rescued her. They returned to the inn, but when he awoke, he realized it had all been a dream. Yet Qiuyue was beside him, confirming that his dream had been real. She urged him to unearth her grave and call her back to life. Wang did as instructed and found her coffin decayed, but her body intact. He wrapped her and carried her home, telling his family the story. After calling her name and holding her lifeless form each night, she revived after 3 days. Though she could now walk, she remained weak and delicate, her charm even more captivating. Qiuyue often advised Wang to do good deeds and live virtuously. Following her guidance, Wang changed his ways and they lived peacefully together thereafter. The Lotus Princess. Story from The Complete Illustrations of Liao Zhai, Volume 47, Second Tale. In Jiaozhou, there lived a man named Dou Sheng, whose courtesy name was Xiao. One afternoon, while he was taking a nap, he felt as though someone in a brown short coat was standing by his bed, looking anxious and scanning the room as if trying to say something. Dou Sheng asked, "Is there something you need?" The man in brown responded, "My lord would like to invite you for a visit." Dou Sheng then asked, "Who is your lord?" The man in brown answered, "He lives nearby." Dou Sheng followed the man out. After turning a corner, they arrived at a place full of pavilions and towers, one after another, leading to a sprawling compound. As they walked, Dou Sheng saw countless doors and windows, which didn't seem like a human dwelling. There were numerous palace attendants and women officers bustling about, all asking the man in brown, "Has Dou Sheng arrived?" The answer came, "He has been brought here." Soon, a noble official appeared to greet Dou Sheng with great respect. Dou Sheng said, "I have had no dealings with your family, and thus I haven't visited before. I am now puzzled by your kindness." The official smiled and replied, "Our king has long heard of your family's reputation for integrity and honor, and he admires you deeply. He has long wanted to meet you." Dou Sheng, even more surprised, asked, "Who is your king?" The official replied, "Please wait a moment and you will soon see." Before long, 2 female officers arrived holding a pair of large flags, guiding Dou Sheng into the palace. After passing through several gates, they reached a large hall where the king sat. When the king saw Dou Sheng, he descended the steps to greet him. After exchanging formalities, they sat down for a feast with a lavish spread. As Dou Sheng glanced up, he noticed a plaque above the hall inscribed with the words Guifu, Laurel Palace. Feeling uneasy, he fumbled his words. The king reassured him, "It seems fate has brought us together as neighbors. Please enjoy yourself and do not be troubled by such concerns." Dou Sheng simply nodded in response. The wine flowed and the music played softly, with the sounds of bamboo flutes and strings filling the air, gentle and pleasant. The king, suddenly inspired, said to the officials, "I just thought of a line and I challenge you to come up with a matching couplet. The first line is, 'The talented person enters the Laurel Palace.'" Before the officials could think, Dou Sheng quickly replied, "The nobleman loves the lotus." The king was overjoyed and said, "How strange! Lotus is the princess's childhood name. Your reply fits perfectly. Could this be a sign of past lives' fate? Tell the princess to come out and meet this distinguished gentleman." After a moment, the sound of jingling jewelry grew louder, and a sweet fragrance of orchids and musk filled the air. The princess, a beautiful girl of 16 or 17, entered the hall. The king introduced her as his daughter, Lotus, and the princess performed the proper greetings before retiring to the inner chambers. Dou Sheng was immediately struck by her beauty and lost in thought. He sat there, motionless, as the king raised a glass to encourage him to drink, but Dou Sheng seemed oblivious. The king, sensing his guest's feelings, remarked, "My daughter and you are quite well matched. However, I regret that we belong to different kinds. What shall we do?" Dou Sheng seemed not to hear him and continued to sit in a daze. The person sitting next to Dou Sheng discreetly nudged him with their foot and whispered, "The king just bowed to you, and you didn't notice. He has spoken to you, but you haven't responded." Dou Sheng snapped back to awareness, feeling embarrassed. He excused himself from the table, saying, "I am deeply honored by your majesty's kindness, but I fear I have overindulged in drink, and my behavior is disrespectful. It is getting late, and your majesty must have urgent affairs. I must take my leave." The king, rising from his seat, said, "It has been such a pleasure to meet you, Dou Sheng. Why the hurry to leave? If you don't want to stay, I will not insist, but if you miss this place, I shall send for you again." The king ordered his servant to escort Dou Sheng out. On the way, the servant spoke, "The king seems to wish to match you with the princess. Why did you say nothing?" Dou Sheng regretted his silence and walked home, lamenting his missed opportunity. That night, Dou Sheng lay in bed and tried to recall the events of the day, but the fading light outside and the silence seemed to deepen his melancholy. He blew out the candle after dinner, hoping to return to the dreamlike world in his sleep, but found that the path to such a world had vanished, leaving only regret and sorrow. One evening, Dou Sheng was again in bed with a friend when the palace servant from before appeared, bearing the king's invitation to meet. Dou Sheng, eager, agreed to go. When they arrived at the palace, Dou Sheng immediately bowed to the king, who hastened to lift him up and seated him at his side. "Since our last meeting, I know you have been thinking of my daughter," the king said. "I have decided to give her to you. I hope you will not find her lacking." Dou Sheng immediately prostrated himself in gratitude. The king ordered a feast to be prepared, and as they were drinking and enjoying themselves, a palace maid entered and announced that the princess was ready. Moments later, several maidens escorted the princess into the hall. Her head and face were covered in red silk, and she walked lightly, aided by attendants, to the scarlet carpet where she and Dou Sheng performed their wedding rites. Afterward, they were taken to their bridal chamber, where the room was cool and fragrant. Dou Sheng, gazing at the princess, marveled, "With such beauty before me, I could forget my own mortality. But I fear this is all just a dream." The princess laughed and said, "It is no dream. I am truly here with you." The next morning, Dou Sheng playfully applied makeup to the princess, measuring her waist and checking the size of her feet. The princess asked, "Has Dou Sheng gone mad?" He replied, "I have been deceived by dreams before, and I am afraid this may be another, so I must carefully study you to remember it if it fades." Just then, a palace maid rushed in, shouting, "A monster has entered the palace. The king has taken refuge in the side hall, and disaster is imminent." Dou Sheng rushed to the king's side, who was weeping, holding Dou Sheng's hand. "I hoped for a lasting union, but who could have foreseen such a calamity? Our country is in peril. What can we do?" Dou Sheng, alarmed, asked for an explanation, and the king handed him a report. The document detailed the appearance of a monstrous serpent, hundreds of feet long, which had been devouring citizens and causing destruction everywhere. The country was on the brink of collapse. The king begged Dou Sheng to help. Dou Sheng read the report, his face turning pale. A servant ran in, urgently announcing, "The monster is here." The king cried, "My daughter has brought this disaster upon you." Dou Sheng hurried back to the bridal chamber, only to find the princess weeping with her attendants. She clung to his sleeve, saying, "What shall we do now, my lord?" Feeling desperate, Dou Sheng took her hand and said, "My family is poor. I have no mansion, only a humble cottage. Would you come there with me for safety?" The princess tearfully agreed. They hurried to Dou Sheng's home, where the princess looked around and said, "This place is safe, much better than the palace. But what about my parents? We need to build a place for everyone." Dou Sheng, caught in a dilemma, was soon comforted by the princess's cries. He felt helpless, and she continued to sob uncontrollably. Suddenly, Dou Sheng woke up, realizing it had all been a dream. The sound of weeping persisted, but upon listening closely, he realized it was the buzz of bees flying around his pillow. He exclaimed in disbelief, What a strange event! His friend, startled, asked what had happened. Du Sheng recounted the entire dream, and his friend, equally astonished, suggested they investigate the bees. Du Sheng decided to build a hive for them, and as soon as the structure was started, a swarm of bees arrived from outside, filling the area. He traced their path and found that they had come from a nearby old man's garden, where a beehive had been for over 30 years. Someone told the old man about Du Sheng's hive, and when he investigated, he found a large serpent inside the hive. It turned out that the giant snake from Du Sheng's dream was the very same snake that had been inhabiting the hive. After killing the snake, the bees prospered in Du Sheng's house without any further strange occurrences. The third story, The Green-Clad Woman. Yu Jing, a scholar from Yidu, known as Xiao Song, studied at Lichuan Temple. One night, as he was reading aloud, he suddenly heard a woman's voice from outside his window, praising him. Master Yu reads diligently. Yu Jing wondered, who could this woman be in such a remote mountain? He was about to question her when the door opened and the woman entered. She said, "You are very hard-working." Yu Jing stood in shock, seeing that the woman was dressed in a green gown and was stunningly beautiful. He realized she was no ordinary human and asked repeatedly where she lived. She responded, "Do you think I'm a human who eats others? Why insist on knowing my origins?" Yu Jing felt drawn to her, and they slept together that night. She undressed, revealing a waist so slim it could hardly be covered by a hand. As dawn broke, she gracefully walked out, and from that moment, she visited him every night. One evening, they drank wine together. The woman spoke with such understanding of music that Yu Jing said, "Your voice is soft and delicate. If you were to sing, it would surely captivate anyone." The woman smiled and replied, "I dare not sing lest I steal your soul." However, Yu Jing insisted, and she agreed, saying, "It's not that I'm unwilling, but I fear others may hear. If you must, I will sing for you, but only softly, just enough for you to understand the meaning." She gently tapped her foot to keep rhythm and sang, her voice barely audible, like a whisper. The crow on the tree scattered at midnight. No regret for the embroidered shoes wet. Only fear that my love has no companion. Her voice, though faint, was hauntingly melodic and soul-stirring. After she finished, the woman opened the door and looked outside, saying, "Be cautious. Someone may be outside." She then circled the house before returning inside. Yu Jing asked, "Why are you so fearful?" The woman laughed and said, "As the saying goes, the ghost that steals life is always afraid of people. This is about me." After some time, they went to sleep. Suddenly, the woman seemed troubled and said, "Could this be the end of our fate?" Yu Jing anxiously inquired why, and she explained, "My heart beats erratically. I fear disaster is near." Yu Jing reassured her, saying, "It's common for the heart to race and the eyes to flutter. There's no need to worry." This comforted her, and they became close once again. As dawn approached, the woman rose and began to put on her clothes. Just before she was about to leave, she hesitated and returned, saying, "For some reason, I feel afraid. Please see me out." Yu Jing got up and escorted her out of the door. She told him, "Wait here while I jump over the wall, then you may go back inside." Yu Jing agreed and watched as she disappeared around the corner of the house. Just as he was about to go back to bed, he heard her urgent cries for help. Yu Jing ran toward the sound, but found no one. The cries seemed to come from the eaves of the house. Looking up, he saw a tiny spider manipulating something, emitting desperate, pitiful sounds. Yu Jing broke the spider's web and cleared the strands from the object, revealing a green bee, barely alive. He took the bee back to his room and placed it on the desk. After a while, the green bee slowly revived and began to crawl. It climbed onto the inkstone, dipped itself in ink, and with its body, wrote the character "Thanks" on the desk. Then it stretched its wings and flew out of the window. From that day on, the woman never returned. The Story of Lotus Flower Third Lady. Zhong Xiangru, a scholar from Huzhou, Zhejiang, was walking through his fields one autumn when he noticed something strange. The crops were swaying in an unusual manner, so he walked down a path to investigate. To his surprise, he found a man and a woman in the midst of a passionate rendezvous. He smiled and started to walk away, but the man, embarrassed, quickly dressed and left. The woman hurriedly stood up as well, and as Zhang Xiangru took a closer look, he found her strikingly beautiful. Though he was moved by her charm, he hesitated to act upon his desires, knowing it was a crude situation. He approached her and brushed the dust from her clothes, asking, "Were you happy in your secret meeting?" The woman only smiled and said nothing. Zhang Xiangru leaned in and untied her clothes, feeling her smooth, delicate skin, and found it hard to stop. The woman laughed, saying, "You foolish scholar, what are you doing, wandering your hands over me like that?" Curious, Zhang Xiangru asked her name, but she replied, "Spring winds blow, and after one fleeting meeting, we part ways. Why should I trouble you to investigate? Do you expect me to leave my name and build a chastity shrine?" Zhang Xiangru, somewhat offended, said, "To meet secretly in the wild fields is something servants of mountain villages do. You, with your beauty, should hold yourself in higher regard, even if it is a secret meeting. Why degrade yourself in such a manner?" The woman was impressed by his words. Zhang Xiangru invited her to his study, and though she hesitated, she agreed to meet him there later that night. She arrived as promised, and the two shared a passionate affair that continued for several days without anyone knowing. One day, a monk from the west living in the village temple met Zhang Xiangru and remarked, "There is something strange about you. Have you encountered something unusual?" Zhang Xiangru replied, "No." But soon he fell ill. Each night, the woman brought him fruits and pastries and tended to him like a loving wife, though she always insisted on their physical closeness, which Zhang Xiangru struggled to endure. He began to suspect that she might not be human. Unable to turn her away, he decided to seek help from the monk, recalling the warning he had received earlier. The monk confirmed his suspicions, saying, "She is a fox spirit with shallow cultivation. She is easy to capture." The monk gave Zhang Xiangru 2 talismans and instructed him to prepare a clean altar. When the fox spirit entered, Zhang Xiangru's family was to quickly cover the altar with a bowl, then boil it in a pot of water to kill the fox. That night, the woman came to visit, carrying golden kumquats. As she reached Zhang Xiangru's bedside, a wind rushed out from the altar, pulling the woman inside. The family quickly followed the monk's instructions, trapping the woman in the bowl. Zhang Xiangru, saddened by the sight of the kumquats, asked them to release her. The woman, appearing disheveled, kneeled and thanked him, vowing to repay his kindness. A few days later, Zhang Xiangru's condition worsened, and his family went to the market to buy a coffin. On the way, they met a woman who claimed to be his cousin and gave them a medicinal remedy. After taking the medicine, Zhang Xiangru's illness miraculously improved, and he realized it was the fox spirit returning to repay him. He prayed, hoping to meet her again. That night, while drinking alone, Zhang Xiangru heard a tapping on his window. He opened the door to find the fox spirit, who expressed regret over leaving him. She told him that she had found a worthy companion for him, someone who would fulfill his needs. She instructed him to visit the South Lake the following morning and look for a woman wearing a white gauze shawl, picking lotus flowers. Zhang Xiangru should approach her, and if he couldn't discern her destination, he should look for a hidden lotus flower near the shore. By lighting the flower's stem, he would gain a beautiful wife and live a long life. The next day, Zhang Xiangru followed her instructions and found a beautiful girl at the lake. He picked the lotus flower, and when he lit its stem, it transformed into a beautiful woman. Zhang Xiangru was overjoyed, but when he tried to touch her, she warned him that she was a fox spirit and would bring him misfortune. Undeterred, he continued, and she transformed into a strange stone. Zhang Xiangru kept the stone on his altar, and it later turned into a beautiful garment. As time passed, Zhang Xiangru and the fox spirit lived happily together. She gave birth to a son, and years later, when their bond was fulfilled, she told him it was time to part. Zhang Xiangru begged her to stay, but she explained that there must always be separation after reunion. She assured him that their son would live a long and prosperous life. Before leaving, she told Zhang Xiangru, "If you ever miss me, simply hold the shawl I left behind and call out Lotus Flower Third Lady. I will appear to you again." She vanished, and Zhang Xiangru found a single red shoe on the ground, which turned into a beautiful stone. From then on, whenever he longed for her, he would call out, and the Lotus Woman would appear, smiling but never speaking. Golden Life was a man from Jinning, Yunnan, who married a woman from his village named Mu. They had a son who had just turned 1 year old when Golden Life suddenly fell ill. Sensing his impending death, he told his wife, "If I die, you must remarry. Do not live in widowhood." His wife promised him, swearing to remain faithful and stay a widow. Golden Life then turned to his mother, saying, "After I die, you must take care of my little son Abao. Don't let my wife live in widowhood." His mother cried and agreed. Not long after, Golden Life passed away. Mu's mother came to mourn, and after crying, she said to Golden Life's mother, "A calamity has struck. My daughter is still young and frail. How will she live in the future?" Golden Life's mother, in her grief, became very angry upon hearing these words and retorted, "She must stay a widow." Mu's mother felt ashamed and said no more. That night, she slept beside her daughter and secretly whispered, "Anyone can have a husband. With my son-in-law's good looks, wouldn't it be easy for her to find a good man? If she doesn't find someone soon, just sitting there staring at this little boy, isn't she being foolish? If your mother-in-law insists you remain a widow, don't give her a good face." Golden Life's mother, who happened to overhear this conversation from outside, was enraged. The next day, Golden Life's mother confronted Mu's mother. "My son had a will. He didn't want his wife to remain a widow. Since you are so impatient, she must remain a widow." Mu's mother angrily left after hearing this. That night, Golden Life appeared in a dream, crying and advising his mother not to make his wife remain a widow. Golden Life's mother, feeling confused, ordered someone to inform Mu's mother, stating that after the funeral, his wife was free to remarry. However, several geomancers said it was not suitable to hold a funeral that year. Golden Life's wife, eager to look attractive for remarriage, continued to wear makeup and adorn herself even while still in mourning. At home, she wore simple clothes, but once she returned to her mother's house, she dressed brightly and flamboyantly. Golden Life's mother, seeing this, became displeased with her behavior, but chose to tolerate it, understanding that one day she would become someone else's wife. One day, a man named Dong Gui, known for his laziness and poor character, saw Golden Life's wife and took a liking to her. He bribed an old woman in the neighborhood to set up a secret affair. Night after night, Dong Gui would scale the wall and sneak into Golden Life's wife's room. This went on for more than 10 days, and the scandal spread throughout the village, though Golden Life's mother remained unaware. One night, as Dong Gui and Golden Life's wife were in the midst of their affair, the coffin of Golden Life suddenly made a loud noise, as though firecrackers were being set off. The young maid in the next room heard footsteps and saw the figure of Golden Life, dead, but walking through the room with a sword. After a moment, screams were heard, and Dong Gui ran out of the room naked. A while later, Golden Life's wife was dragged out by her hair, screaming. Golden Life's mother was shocked and rushed to the door, but her daughter-in-law wouldn't respond. She chased her outside but could find no trace of her. Returning to the room, she noticed that the lamp was still on and found a pair of men's shoes. Calling the maid, the girl trembled and confessed everything. Both women were filled with fear and confusion. Dong Gui, after fleeing from the scene, crouched in a corner of the neighbor's yard, freezing and shaking. He sought clothing from an old woman but found only her daughter-in-law at home. Mistaking her for the old woman, he climbed into bed and tried to take advantage of her. But the woman woke up and asked, "Are you back?" Dong Gui, still pretending to be the husband, was allowed to proceed without suspicion. But soon the husband came home and, upon hearing the inappropriate behavior, rushed in and killed Dong Gui. In the following days, the truth of the scandal spread, and Golden Life's mother was drawn into the investigation. In the end, it was revealed that the woman, who had been encouraging her daughter to remarry, had been guilty of aiding and abetting the affair. She was punished with a beating, and her property was seized to pay the fine. Dong Gui's partner, the old woman's neighbor, was also beaten to death for facilitating the affair. The case was finally closed, but the tragic events left everyone involved deeply affected. The story unfolds the complexities of grief, family honor, and the consequences of forbidden actions, blending superstition, betrayal, and social expectations. In today's video, we've explored 5 fascinating stories from the 47th volume of Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio: Yao Jie, Wu Qiuyue, Princess Lotus, the Green-Clad Woman, Miss Lotus Blossom, and Jin Shengse, translated as Golden Life. These tales, filled with mystery and supernatural elements, offer a glimpse into the social and cultural fabric of 17th century China, where human emotions and folklore intertwine with the spiritual world. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed these stories, and be sure to subscribe to Eastern Brush, Western Soul, where we share more about Eastern classics and the rich tradition of ink art. Special thanks to Little Fish for her contribution to translating these tales.